The information we will be sharing, you got to take this and put it in your toolbox and let us know that you're ready. For those that don't know, my name is Tim Cornegay, and I am the Director of Initiatives for Live Free California. 20 amazing organizations across the state, all doing transformative work. So what I want y'all to, let me hear y'all say transformation versus transaction.
Transformation versus transaction.
I need y'all to say it a little louder than that. We need some energy up in here. Transformation versus transaction.
Transformation versus transaction.
That's what I'm talking about. We don't want to show up when we need people. We want to show up because we're in transformative relationships because these are our folks. And I want to plug into something that Latifah said early. We are all tired of conventions, right? This ain't no convention. This is a family reunion. So look at the person next to you and know that that's your family and say, what's up, fam?
What's up, fam?
And we are about to communicate up in here. Y'all ready? Yeah. Okay, let's go. Now, our first panelist is an individual, amazing, doesn't even describe who he is, what he does. The work that he does is so outside the box. It has brought individuals that never wanted to be involved in anything like this and turned them into leaders. Politically aware and ready to fight a different war. I won't even try to introduce him. He has the power to introduce himself, and I'll turn it over to our first panel.
Well, that was a Steve Harvey introduction. I was ready to come out with some theme music. What's up, everybody? My name is Ben McBride. It's good to be in the room. Here in the Golden State. For folks who haven't gotten a chance to meet, Executive Director of Live Free California, and we're excited to be able to host everybody here in the Bay Area. Who am I? I'm just a black dude that's trying to figure out how we can live free from all this racism in this world.
Thank you, Brother Ben. Now, our next panelist gets the same treatment. I won't even attempt to introduce her either. I just say, when you hear the word boss, remember our next panelist because that's exactly what she is.
Thank you, Tim. That's a big insertion to the market. Good morning, everybody. My name is Casey Patterson. I'm the founder and chief architect of the Black Equity Collective. Born and raised in San Diego. Shout out to Southeast.
Straight out of Southeast. Let's go, Casey. There you go.
Just a little bit about me and my background. My parents were born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. My dad was in the Navy, which is how we ended up in San Diego, where I was born and raised. I grew up economically working poor, socially and politically conservative, evangelical, Christian, and culturally black. And I ended up going to Pepperdine for undergrad, which is very conservative. But my senior year, I took a class, a Religion 301 class called Jesus on the Margins of Society. Wow. It was taught by a Latino brother, and it was the first time I was ever introduced to the concept of community organizing. It was the first time that I ever actually saw Jesus as a community organizer. Wow. And it really lit a spark in me because it opened my eyes to a faith that I always felt in me, but didn't necessarily see around me. And so we'll get into a little bit about how I got into philanthropy and what my thinking is about transformative philanthropy, but know that the root of it started in that class when I saw Jesus as a community organizer. So I'll turn it back to Tim and let us keep it going.
Thank you, boss. For our next panelist, what I'll say is some of us, we end up doing this work by default. We don't enter it with purpose. Somebody told us about something because the other things that we were doing weren't fulfilling what we needed, so we started doing this. Default. This individual began doing this work on purpose and in purpose, and I'll let him tell you who he is.
Around not just thinking about loved ones that have been impacted by incarceration, I realized that myself my identity as a black preacher had to change. That it wasn't that the loved ones in the street needed to become someone else, I needed to become someone else. That could be a deeper relationship with our loved ones that were in the streets and in the communities. And I think the further that I went on, the reason it continued to expand for me was the more that I got in the movement, the more I realized that we are sick in the movement with the same thing that the world is sick with. I didn't like each other, relationship with each other. So for me, this work has been not just about the conditions we want to change. For me, this work has been not just about the conditions we want to change out in the community, but it's also about the out of the United States of America, but how do we cast that same demon out of ourselves? And so hopefully work is the work that we really want to become.
Question for challenge traditional philanthropic models to seek equity funding streams for folks like.
I didn't even know what philanthropy was when I was 16, 17 years old. You could have said the word and it would have went right over me. But I mentioned that I took this class at Pepperdine and I started to see Jesus as a community organizer. I went to Pepperdine to study news. I was going to be a newscaster, or so I thought. And after that class, I started getting more involved with the local community, and I actually wanted to change my major, but you know, when you're a senior, you gotta graduate, so you do what you gotta do, right? So I actually made a decision after graduation that I wanted to go work in the nonprofit sector because I felt this calling that just wasn't fulfilled when I was in newsrooms or working in production houses and things of that nature. And so I started working in the nonprofit sector, and I often describe that I was actually in philanthropy for about 11 years before I even knew it. And what I mean by that is I worked for these organizations, these nonprofit organizations that were intermediaries. So they got a large, in one case, government grant, federal grant, in another case, a large grant from the James Irvine Foundation. And the job was to basically take those resources and re-grant them out to other nonprofit organizations. Now, I didn't know that I was doing philanthropy, but essentially I was functioning in that regard. And it was in that space that I really started to see that there was a necessary and really like symbiotic relationship between the funder, the intermediary, which was my nonprofit, and those organizations on the ground doing the work. And that relationship was really that, one, funders don't do work. They give out money. That is their role. Y'all do the work. But funders have this mission. Every single funder on their website has a mission. The only way for their mission to be accomplished is if your intermediary nonprofit could be achieved, is if the mission of each of the organizations we were funding was achieved. And it really transformed my thinking because I started to understand that my role and my job as an intermediary, technical assistance provider, pushing their mission, which was the only way we were going to accomplish ours and the only way the funder was going to accomplish theirs. And so there was this relationship that existed that was not a power imbalance. It wasn't this funders sit up high and the organizations just receive the money. It was really the power of the organizations was that in order for them to work, they needed the funder to understand that the funder needed them more than they needed the funder. And so I actually started to transform my thinking around the role of transformative philanthropy as an intermediary and really see that we had a role to be bridge builders. We had a role to be connectors. We had a role to really start to challenge some of these traditional paradigms and some of these traditional ways of thinking that sort of put funders on pedestals in a way really that they didn't quite deserve because it's not like they were on the ground doing the work. So those were really some of the moments, I would say, where understanding and working in these intermediary organizations, where I started to see that philanthropy is actually different, really different than the way we imagine it when we understand the function of how work actually gets done so that mission can be accomplished.
Thank you, Casey. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I hope y'all caught what she said, that their mission is incomplete without you. Have you ever thought that funders needed you more than you need them? So if you didn't write that down and remember that. Their mission is not complete without you. Now, a little bit about your story. So how does that turn into like organizing and civic engagement and voter education and voter registration? What's that journey? How did you get there?
Yeah, there's a few steps in that journey. And as a result, right, that's where I was catching suspensions from school, where I got charged, right, misdemeanor assault, battery, all these things, because I was literally fighting, hand and fist, against white supremacists. And again, I'll continue to see the systems align themselves to protect white supremacy. And so I knew that it had to be something bigger than fighting with my hands and fists, right? It's going to get me locked up. We got to do something different. So I knew that I had to dedicate myself to my people and figure out ways to break down these walls of supremacy. Getting there, right, took some time. I was organizing on campus for a little bit. Right? That center in the community with no resources. I got people, I'm trying to find housing all day, there's nothing, right? And so I knew that the service provision work that we were doing was just putting a Band-Aid, if that, right? We didn't even have Band-Aids, we were taking the shirts off and just in the field, right? And so I knew that there had to be systemic changes, right? That there needed to be system change. We needed to galvanize, build power to change how the systems worked, right? Then that brought me into a whole new path, right? I found that organizing could be a job. I didn't know that, right? I thought it was something to do in your spare time. And so I found folks that were doing that work, right? Building grassroots power across the state, multi-issue, multi-racial kind of coalition spaces, making great advancements. But as I looked around the room, I didn't see many of us. Not many leaders, not many organizations. And so, brilliant Black organizations to do this work at all the whole.
In the context of coalition building, how do you perceive the term bodies, and how does that relate to the communities you engage with in their lived experience?
So part of the bodies piece is we're not going to be able to live free if we don't get the right bodies on the team. But that means that we've got to be able to get bodies that don't always look like ours. Y'all tracking with me? Yeah. Right? So just because we all Black in the room and brown folks in the room and some of our white relatives in the room, but particularly around Black folks, just because we all Black don't mean we the same. Yeah. We have different experiences across our spectrum, right? So I'm always thinking about, when we think about organizing bodies, I got to think about how do I get the bodies who are like me. So that's why I've engaged in a lot of trying to organize Black preachers and Black religious institutions, et cetera, et cetera. But I also had to think about the Black bodies that aren't like me, our loved ones that's on the block, right? And so in California, we have been talking for a while that we need to organize, everybody say clergy, congregations, and the concrete. From your tribe. Yeah. You gotta have people outside your tribe. Your tribe's not big enough if you are not uncomfortable. Right? I remember we were around the corner, well, it's actually not around the corner from here. I was in downtown Oakland before. We were doing some of the gun violence work. It's a brother named Emmett. We came down from meeting with them up top, and we got downstairs, and I was like, yo, Em, you're gonna have to put the pistol down, man. You can't be walking around here with a gun, et cetera, et cetera. And he told me, he was like, you really want to have a conversation? I said, yeah. He was like, so let me tell you this. He said, are you asking me to put the gun down for me, or are you asking me to put the gun down for you? Oh. Wow. He said, now, while we was at the meeting, I pulled up your Facebook, and I see on your Facebook, you cupcaking with your wife and cupcaking with your kids and all of that kind of stuff. He was like, when I got this hammer on me in my pocket, and I'm running around East Oakland, I have a certain reputation. I can keep people safe when I walk around with the hammer. If I give up that hammer, not only am I unsafe, but other people that are in my group are unsafe. He said, now, if I put it down, am I coming to your house to cut cake with you and your wife for Thanksgiving? Wow. Am I coming to hang out with y'all on the weekends? And he said, so until you are ready to answer that question, he was like, me and you don't really have nothing to talk about. He said, so are you asking me to put the gun down for me, or are you asking me to put the gun down for you? Until I got close to that body, I was not going to live in that awareness. So if we're going to live free and imagine a big enough circle for everybody to live free, that means we got to have relationships with people that are not like us. Wow. So I really want to encourage us when we think about bodies, right? Think about the loved ones that's in the hood. Think about our loved ones that are formerly incarcerated or newly empowered voices, as Tim likes to say. Think about our LGBTQ plus relatives. Think about our trans relatives. Think about all the people who are not like you. We get in these Christian spaces. Think about our Muslim relatives. Because we'll get in spaces and we start talking about Jesus with no consciousness that everybody doesn't relate to Jesus in the same way. So how do we think about engaging with this and so get the real bodies and then organize the institutional bodies? Everybody say institutions. Speak to institutions. So as individually passionate as you might be, individually you can't move an institution. But an institution can talk to institutions. So I'm all about organized bodies that are not like you. And just because you get proximate to a body, don't mean you gotta agree with everything they believe. True that. I know I don't agree with probably half the stuff some of y'all believe in this room, but that's cool. We ain't gotta kill each other because we don't all believe the same thing. But we gotta organize some of those bodies. Then we gotta organize institutional bodies. Churches, mosques, community centers, CBOs. We need to organize these institutions so that they're all working collectively to live free. Everybody doesn't have to do the same thing. Let's organize bodies to do something. If we'll all do our something, I believe we'll get to that freedom for all of us.
Yeah. We back to you, Casey. So, like, what catalyzed this energy in you that prompted you to want to reshape the way philanthropy behaves? That's a hard word to pronounce. Philanthropy behaves towards us.
Yeah. Well, we heard earlier on the panel, institutions organizing institutions. So the way I've sort of come to see it and believe it, number one is that I don't organize bodies, I organize books. Right. That's my role. Yeah. I know that, I understand that. I mean, collectively, I've raised almost $40 million for Black-led organizations in the state of California. And for $40 million. And you can't organize bodies without bucks. And the reality is that philanthropy and fundraising is a very relational endeavor. And the reason why a lot of Black-led organizations don't have access to resources is because we don't have access to networks and relationships where that money is flowing. We don't have the social connections, we don't have the social relationships. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but at the end of the day, funders fund who they know and who they trust. Yes. They don't know you, they haven't built a relationship with you to trust you, then they're just not gonna fund you. And so part of the transformational thinking that I've had is in my role in organizing dollars, I also have a role in organizing relationships and making sure that funders and Black-led organizations specifically know each other and being a bridge to relational connections and social connections so that you all can be in the room with funders as peers. So that you all hear how we are equipped to help you meet that mission. And not come from a place of deficit, but come from a place of partnership. So again, to me, the transformation thinking about one of the other things that has really transformed my thinking over the past year is because Black-led organizations, the data, there is a long history of that. So a lot of the work that we do between Black-led organizations and philanthropy to invest in the long-term sustainability of Black-led organizations. That is our mission. It is about organizational sustainability. But one of the things that I started to really evolve my thinking around, and this actually came out of a trip that I took earlier this year to Israel. And I saw that they are not about organizing or building organizations, and understand that it is not sufficient enough for us to be satisfied with building an organization. We have to be committed to building institutions, because it's institutions that protect our culture, that protect our history, that protect our now, and our vision now is to move beyond organization building and to start to get really, really clear and committed to institution building in the Black community. Work matters, and it needs to be around, and doesn't need to be around.
So for our next question, it goes to Kevin. How do you connect the importance of community organizing, engaging, and activating people in their story?
And so I really don't separate, right, the community organizing from the voter engagement. Really, voter engagement is one of many community organizing tactics, right? Black folk, right, we have been attacked on all fronts, and we have to operate on all fronts in all arenas of, including the electoral arena. The real question is, how do we take the work that we're doing in the electoral arena to lasting change, lasting infrastructure, lasting institutions, lasting leaders that can also then transfer that power into all the other arenas, right? And so, for us, I think we want to define, right, how we think about and approach voter engagement, and we'll use a term that we call integrated voter engagement, which just really means that voter engagement is integrated into our community organizing, and community organizing is integrated into our voter engagement, right? We don't parachute in, as Reverend Sierra was saying, right? What would it look like for me to come drive down from Long Beach into San Diego and try to tell San Diego what they should be doing? Khaled and Pillars will run me out. We built in Southeast San Diego so they can galvanize their folk around a collective effort and vision, right, that we built for across the state. So we don't parachute in, we really build up the capacity of local organizations to do this work, to build leaders, to activate those leaders in the electoral arena, to build a base in their community, to bring those folk into those every single year, whether there's an election or not, right? We got to keep people engaged. Registering to vote or going out to the polls on election day is like getting a gym membership. You ain't getting ripped, you ain't getting your six-pack ass just by getting a gym membership, right? You gotta go to the gym and work it out, right? You're not gonna get change just by voting, just by registering to vote. You gotta go to City Hall and work it out. You gotta go to the state legislature and work it out, right? You gotta go to DC and work it out. So we have to stay engaged. A lot of times we check the box and say, oh, nothing happened. Well, what do we do after that, right? That was election day is draft day, right? So you just sports analogy, right? You still gotta go to practice and scrimmage. You gotta show up for game day. And so part of our work with voter engagement is building, again, the leadership, the expertise, the infrastructure, so folk can do this work for the long term, build a base of power, not only to turn folk out on election day, but keep those folk engaged, keep the fire on, and keep the pressure on the necks of those who are making decisions for us. And so, the last thing I'll add here is that the civic engagement work, again, gives us the opportunity to use these flashpoints, right? Where people are paying attention, news is kind of talking about stuff, so we can use that as an opportunity to say, hey, this is something that's happening, right? Let's talk about it. But we can insert our own narratives, make meaning for ourselves and for our communities in ways that traditional organizations don't. We can talk to our people, right? Oftentimes these traditional campaigns will skip over our community, only go to us at the last minute just to take some pictures and maybe get our votes. But there's no kind of long-term investment if we're being engaged at all. And then it leads to the cycles of disengagement, right? Where, that community didn't vote, so we're not going to engage them this election. And so then what happens is, listen, we don't vote because nobody's talking to us. And then next election, they didn't vote again, so we ain't going to go with it. We cannot repeat the cycles of white supremacy amongst our own folk. So we have to be in the trenches. We have to do it all for our people. And utilize these, like funders like civic engagement. It's easy. It's something that is more mainstream. How do we use that to build power that can be then brought into that and all the other things?
Thank you. Come on now, y'all gotta clap that up. That was some good information. question, are y'all ready for the membership for change? That is the question. Now for our final question of Brother Ben. From your experience, how have coalitions amplified the efforts of individual entities, and why do you believe they are integral to system change?
Say it again.
From your experience,
Okay, got that.
how have coalitions amplified the efforts of individual entities, and why do you believe they are integral to system change?
So I'm gonna answer it this way, why organizations are, from my experience, important towards persistent change.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I'm a little slow, I'm 46 now, so I'm getting brain slowing down. Pastor Zach Carey, 32. Everybody makes a noise for Pastor Zach Carey in the room. I'm just teasing because he's up here teasing me. Why organizations are important? Here's the reality, and I want to be quick because I'm curious to hear what y'all have to say. So why are organizations important? Because we need anything else in the cities we live across this country. We don't own the businesses, we don't own the media, we don't own the city politics. We have are our institutions, the historical ones that we have, and the organizations that we are beginning to leverage for change. So I think we have to figure out not just how to leverage them, but how to make them come together. And one quick thing Casey didn't say, but I want to shout her out. Casey is amazing, y'all. So any folks that, please pull her to the side. She might not appreciate me saying, telling folks to pull her to the side. So I'm sorry, but please pull her to the side because she is amazing. She's beginning to change the game. I gotta say this, because she makes funders sign an agreement to give her money. Did y'all hear that? Some of y'all ain't never raised no money, so you don't know what I'm talking about. So when you have to raise money, these people make you sign your life away on this document. But all the stuff you're gonna give, they'll give you $16 and you gotta go save 30,000 people from dying in the streets, right? On $16 in a bucket of chicken that you pick up in the foundation on your way out. She has changed the game so that the funders have to sign an agreement that she sets the conditions for how they give her money. Right? To me, this is a new kind of institution building that we need to do. Last piece I would say, because in order to get the systems changed, that's why we put the bucks in here. We can't do it without money. We can't do it without money, and I think we can find ways to work together. A good opportunity that inspired me is that Casey, myself, Anthony Thigpen, shout out to Anthony Thigpen, who's not in the room right now, but he's one of the godfathers of the work that we do here in California. During the George Floyd summer, funders were coming to us trying to get us to take little bits of money to do change. And what Anthony said was, don't allow them to talk to us individually. Make them talk to us collectively. So they were talking to some of us, 5 million here will help respond to this. 5 million here will help respond to that. Anthony was like, no. Casey, myself, Anthony said, let's put a white paper together. And that's how we were able to create the California Black Freedom Fund, $100 million in California over 5 years to fund our work. So we could go after what my brother was talking about, the public funds that are available to make sure that all of our communities are living free. But this means we've got to learn how to be in collaboration with each other. We can't be hating on each other. We can't be fighting each other. And if you get the nickel, I can't be mad that you got the nickel. Let me go ahead and rock with you and your nickel until I get my dime. Right? So I think we've got to really become the tribe again, come together, because we can change this system if we're working together. I said I wasn't going to talk about getting ideas, so I'm saying. Thank you.
Let's wrap it up again. Casey, now y'all know why in the beginning I said the only description I have for her is boss, because she intimidates funders, and that's a superpower. So Casey, why do you think organizing coalitions are essential in reshaping the mindset of philanthropy?
Well, I think, again, I'll say again that just my exposure to Jesus as a community organizer, there's not a single movement in the history of human existence that did not begin by organizing. Not a single one. And so we cannot pretend as if organizing is not an essential tool to building our democracy. We just can't afford to not have it. And in being in coalition with one another, I think one of the things that the three of our networks have really learned is how to leverage our strengths. At the collective, we don't organize churches. We don't organize individual pastors. But I know who does. And y'all don't do the kind of organizational resiliency, deep sort of investment in organizations that we do, but that's why we're here. We don't do the kind of civic engagement that Kev and California Black Power Network does. There's a role for each of us to play. And we talked about this at our symposium in June about how we need to think about building an underground root system, an interconnected root system. That the analogy was Hurricane Katrina that we talked about in June, and how it was the oak trees that stood when everything else gave way, when the levees fell. It was the oak trees that stood. And the reason why the oak trees stood is because they were an underground, interconnected root system. And that's what we are trying to build and become, a root system amongst each other, so that they can't knock your organization down, because the root system is strong enough to hold you up. They can't knock the collective down. They can't knock California Black Power Network down, or any of your organizations that are connected, because the root system is strong enough to survive a Category 5 hurricane. And so that is the way, from a perspective of coalition building, that we need to start seeing our work, and we need to start seeing our communication with funders the same way. And to ask, well, if you're gonna fund me, what about Empower Initiative? I need them to do my work. What about Black Power Network? I can't do the kind of work that we do without them. And so we have to be committed to speaking each other's names in the rooms that we're in with funders. We have to let them know that you can't fund me at the expense of someone else. You can't pit us against each other, because we're a connected group system. We're a package deal. And that's what the California Black Freedom Fund has really been able to leverage, is really putting us in a space where we're not pitted against each other. The mission is to grow the pie, And to me, that's the sort of transformational thinking that we have to have. And the last thing I'll say, that I hope you all walk away with today. Funders, like any other system, responds to pressure. They should be a target of your organizing, because there isn't a single funder who wants to be on the wrong side of an organizing effort. And they will respond to the demands of community. But you have to make the demand. You have to make the demand. If you want them to fund differently, demand it together. Ben mentioned that I do funder agreements. You know why I do that? It's because if we're really going to be in partnership, that's what a partnership is. I agree to something, and you agree to something. I'm not the only one agreeing to something, and you just get to walk away scot-free. That's no partnership. So if we really are going to change the relationship, I had to put a demand on them and say, if you want to partner with the collective, you don't get to get your Black equity credit on our back for nothing. You gotta show up differently. And this is what it means to show up differently for us. So that's what I'll just leave you with, and saying, we gotta think about our work as an interconnected root system.
Thank you. I'm trusting that y'all are feeling the power in that conversation. And this kind of conversation could last forever, but we don't have forever. So we're going to kind of wind down so we can get these last questions out of the way, so we can give some of you the opportunity to talk among yourselves and ask some of the questions that may be coming up for you. Is that cool, y'all?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Kevin, last question to you is, how can participation create more resilient political systems that truly represent their constituencies?
First of all, let me just say, I gotta echo my brothers up here. Get you with Casey in your town. Ain't nothing better than watching Casey Patterson bring on some funders, right? In a real way, not just sign an agreement, but hold you accountable to it and make sure that you're not gonna squeeze us, right, and make us do free work. And I've seen her do it in real time. She used to manage one of our programs. We got some of those 40 million that she raised, not all of them, but it's a beautiful thing, and it's needed and it's necessary. And I was talking to Sister earlier, right, about how often we give our work away and do stuff for free and cheaper than it should be, and it continues to lower the bar. And so setting that standard is imperative. So I just want to echo that and give my love to Casey.
He got so caught up in the love, I lost myself.
How can participation create more resilient political systems that truly represent their constituencies?
Yeah, so, I think there's a number of things here, right? First of all, I think the coalition building piece is really important in the resiliency piece, and how we can really do the civic engagement and really all the other elements of the work effectively and with power, right? I'm sorry to do this to you, but right, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something, right? And so oftentimes in our local organizations, we find ourselves playing the cow, the chicken, the pig, the farmer, other brothers and sisters, family members who are doing the other parts of the work, right? I think secondly, as I mentioned, right, when we talk about integrated voter engagement, yeah, we want to get voters out, we want to impact elections in the short term, but the long game is about building power, building leaders, building skills and infrastructure for the long haul. So again, we're not just coming in and disappearing, but we're building real governing power. Not the ability to turn out in high numbers, but the ability to see it all the way through from election day to passing of legislation and policies.
Thank you. Clap it up for Kevin.
This is Gangsta-Gangsta. We're here live in Oakland,
Now we've made it to our
doing
final
this here
question for all of the
symposium
panelists.
for the
And
Live Free,
truth be told, they
for the California
answered
Black
the
Power
question
Network and a number of other
already
universities in
so
California.
many ways.
So
So
we're
what
out.
we want to do is give you the opportunity to talk at your